Hello and welcome back to 1874. It's time for a transfer talk Q&A, a show that's going to be shaped by you, the audience. I'm your host, Dan Bardell, and I've asked for questions on X, and I've also asked for, well, I'll get questions as we move through this live on YouTube, of course. This show is sponsored by Luke Roper, and if you want to get 20% off everything Luke have to offer, then TVV20 is the code, and you'll get your 20% off. Now, some of you may be going back and listening to or watching this after the Spurs game, but don't worry, because the Spurs games are relevant to what we're going to be talking about here. This is all going to be to do with transfers. We're not going to talk about anything else other than transfers. So people are starting to join me live on YouTube now. So if you have any questions, please ask me and I'll do my best to answer them to the best of my knowledge. Good start with be happy, just giving me a thumbs up. I don't really know what that means. Maybe you've got a question. Be happy, and hopefully I'll be able to help. So I'm just going to open up X. I should have probably prepped this a little bit better. First question comes from James Gort AVFC, a regular on socials. I always enjoy what he says on social media, in fairness. He says, do we think Matty Cash has been told to step up or be replaced in the summer? Personally, I think we still need a top right back, but Cash has put in his best performances in the last 2 games. What I would say to that, James, is that I think Cash has actually been pretty consistent all season. Obviously, he started off the season with a few niggly injuries. He missed around a month at the start of the season, if my memory serves me correctly. But other than that, Villa have had to manage him to an extent at times. I think it's important to acknowledge that. Villa have tried to manage him. They've taken him off in games. Sometimes he's been left out when they've had a more hectic schedule and he's come on or sat on the bench for 90 minutes. You'll remember Jacob and I joking at the start of the season. He was doing press conferences for Champions League games, and it actually took a while for him to make his Champions League debut. I think Cash has had a good season. He's another one of those players, like so many at Villa, that kind of polarised the fan base a little bit. But by and large, I think he's been pretty consistent this season. Obviously, he doesn't get the assist that Digne gets, but I think he's come to somewhere near that level just in terms of defensive solidarity and his consistency. I think he's cut out errors by and large as well, and just has been really, really consistent, would be my word of the day, as I've said it about 50 times in this segment already. The ideal situation, and I wrote about this in the week, is I think they brought in Garcia to see what he was about. And obviously he played a lot of games in the first kind of month to 6 weeks that he was at the club. We had injuries. I think Cash was one of those injuries, and Garcia played games. And as time's gone on and players have become fit, and obviously now the schedule's lessened as well because we've been knocked out of cup competitions, we've seen less of Garcia. From what I remember, I think his last start might have been against Nottingham Forest, and I remember him getting pulled at half-time for Dizazi in that game. Now, I think he's been fine. He's a young prospect. It was a low-cost signing, a signing that the club, I think, a bit like Nedeljkovic, get him in and see what he's about. Nedeljkovic had his first half of the season, and he's probably going to go in the summer. Garcia, I think, carried more of the traits Emery's looking for a long-term right back. I'm of the opinion that he will be loaned out in the summer, and I'm saying that because of the load of his game time has lessened considerably over the last few months. And we know that Villa wanted a right back last summer, but because of PSR, they couldn't do it. Gertrude, who may actually leave Leipzig in the summer, ended up going to Leipzig from Feyenoord, and that kind of fell through. So we know Villa have held an interest in having a first team right back. I would describe that as, I wouldn't describe Nedeljkovic or Garcia as necessarily being first team ready. Now, we've seen on the other side at left back the way Digne and Maatsen have kind of shared the load, especially in recent months. And you could argue at the moment, actually, that Maatsen's ahead of Digne, and it will be interesting to see who plays against Spurs tonight. But they both offer you different things. What I'm expecting is in the summer, Villa will sign a right back. Matty Cash will be that kind of established Digne right back. And what they'll do is they'll sign someone in the mould of a Maatsen, maybe someone who's a bit more direct going forward, but doesn't offer you the defensive security that probably Matty Cash actually does, in my opinion. They'll want the right-hand side to mirror the left-hand side in terms of fullbacks, in that they'll have the same options. They'll have the same kind of thing to choose from. So manage the minutes between them. For certain games, Digne's been ideal. For certain games, a la Newcastle at home, when Villa decided they were going to attack and really go at them, it was Maatsen that was picked. So I think what they'll do, they'll aim to be doing something similar on the right-hand side, and they'll be looking for a right back in the summer. I don't think it will be someone of the mould of Gertrude who can play right back and centre back. I think they'll want a pure right back. Although, to be fair to Gertrude, I think he can do that role as a right back. he can invert if needs be. He can make a third centre back if needs be, and he can certainly overlap as well. So maybe it would be him, and that versatility would be welcome in terms of being able to do three different things from the position of right back. That gives you more tactical flexibility. It makes your game plans for certain games easier to conduct because you've got a right back that can do all of those things. I'm kind of thinking like Ben White at Arsenal. He's a right back who I think can do everything as a right back, can perform all those three roles. So that's the lay of the land at right back. In my opinion, I expect Villa to sign a right back in the summer to compete with Matty Cash, not to replace him. American Villain on X. Is this the year for Jack Butland? You do never know. American Villain. Obviously, I've been burnt by that story before, but genuinely, and other people have backed me up on this, that was happening. It was on the cards. He was going to be Villa's number one, but it fell through because Stoke moved the goalpost and asked for more money at the death, and Villa pulled out and ended up signing Tom Heaton. So one day, when he does sign as Villa's third choice goalkeeper to comply with homegrown rules, or maybe even second choice in the summer, I'm going to look very clever because I'll have predicted that transfer 5 years ago, and I will be digging out all the tweets from 2019 and I will be putting them on my X feed or Twitter feed. I got told off for saying X the other day. Right, Gav on Twitter. Heard you talk about the midfield earlier this week. Personally, I think that when Onana and Kamara start together, Villa look immense. Ideally, Tielemans in front and two places then up for grabs either side. PS, can we sign Asensio for 13 million? Asensio stuff's got a bit quiet, actually. Maybe a month or two ago when he was really in form, I was hearing quite a lot of stuff in that's going to get done. It's a really low-cost option. PSG are keen to get him off the wage bill. Villa will sign him for a relatively low cost. Has kind of moved away. I've not heard as much about that recently. I did ask Jacob the other day, actually, and he said he wasn't sure what was going on with that at the moment. So between us, we'll endeavour to find out. But I think for 13 million, I think when Emery's chased a player for that long in his career and wanted to work with a player for that long in his career, he's picking him for the big games. You think about Wembley. You think he played last week as well. Didn't Asensio away at Bournemouth? He's picking him for the big game, so he's being used and he's getting starts. And if he's a £13 million signing, which nowadays is borderline nothing, yes, he's got high wages, and we don't know what European competition Villa are going to be in yet, but I think we will sign him purely because Emery was desperate to work with him and desperate to get him in, and has been at previous clubs, and was the summer window the summer window 2 windows ago when he went to PSG. Emery really wants him, so I would expect us to get that done. On the other end of the scale, look, there still will be games where Tielemans plays as a number 10. Everyone was pretty much fit against PSG at home, and Tielemans played as a number 10. So that's going to be an option for certain games where he does want to pair Onana and Kamara if both are here next season, and I expect them both to be here next season. You want to be in a position like I've just spoke about for the fullbacks, where you've got horses for courses, different players for different games, and Villa, the way they've built their squad, they're starting to get that now. If you think about left back that I've just spoke about, left centre back, Pau Torres and Mings, they've probably got that, haven't they? Right centre back and right back, they've not got that yet. Midfield, I think they have got the different options. They've got the option to drop Onana in next to Kamara. They've got the option to play Onana and Tielemans, Kamara and Tielemans, and then the front three is as fluid as you want. Sorry, the three off the striker, it's as fluid as you want. You've got so many different options there and so many different styles of player. Villa have built their squad really well. So I would expect, maybe by the end of January, maybe even this summer, Villa will have that in every position. I think it's going to be a really interesting summer for Villa, and they're going to want to have different options in different areas. What else have we got here? The trouble is they're coming in all the time, so they keep moving. Harry, what's your hunch on Kamara, Dan? Are the contract negotiations moving or at a standstill? And do we think Rodgers is going to get an improved contract in the summer to fend off potential buyers? On the Rodgers front, he's recently got a contract, so there isn't going to be anything on the table for him. Villa have given themselves pretty good security with him. He's got a number of years left on his contract. If someone wants to come and get Morgan Rodgers from Villa, they're going to have to pay a hell of a lot of money. So I think Villa are well set with Rodgers. That to me isn't anything to worry about at all. But as with any player, if someone comes in with ridiculous money in this world, in this landscape with PSR, it's going to be considered. Kamara, so there is the offer of a contract on the table. Kamara is very happy at Villa from what I hear. I think the focus, though, is on the football at the moment and getting to the end of the season, seeing where Villa are at. And then when the season finishes, they'll work out what they're doing. Kamara got 2 years left on his contract, I believe. My belief is that he'll sign that contract in the summer. I'd be very surprised if Kamara didn't sign a new contract in the summer. 5 years left on his contract. Very happy working under Emery. Very happy at Villa and the way they're progressing as a club. I think he's maybe waiting to see what European competition we're in. Certainly, if we're back in the Champions League where we want to be, I think that 5-year contract get signed, and that's a great thing because teams have struggled to get number sixes. We've got a genuine number six of bona fide quality who is one of the best out there in Europe in terms of breaking up the play and what he does, and very, very neat and tidy on the ball as well and carrying the ball. Kamara's perfect for Emery, perfect for Villa, and in all honesty, he'd be perfect for a lot of teams. Dan91 SOU on Twitter. Have you heard anything more about signing the Norwegian wonder kid Nipan? And if we do, where would he fit in? Looks an exciting signing. Going to be honest, I don't know loads about him. The Athletic and David Ornstein, and I spoke to Jacob about him, have reported that Villa are the front runners, which is a great thing. I've said previously that the top young talents in Europe, for Villa to be the kind of club now that gets themselves in pole position to sign the hottest prospects in Europe is a really, really important thing. If Villa sign him, he's coming to play or to form part of the first team squad, make an impact from the bench. When you're not coming in as one for the future when you're one of the hottest prospects in Europe, which he is in terms of the profile of attacking player that he is. Many clubs will be looking at him and what he offers. There's a great article about him on the Athletic, so do go and read that if you are subscribed. Type in his name and you'll be able to find that. If Villa sign him, if he agrees to come to Villa, you're given certain assurances as that profile of player, and he'd come and he'd form part of the first team squad. Maybe not a starter every week, but certainly getting his fair share of football. If Villa were to be in the Europa League, for example, it's made for a young player coming in and finding his way at a big club like Villa to come and get games in the Europa League. Obviously, we hope we're in the Champions League, all of us, but that's how it works. But since Ornstein and I spoke to Jacob about it, I haven't heard anything else. But as far as I'm concerned, Villa are still the front runners. Right, I'm going to jump over to the comments that have been coming in on YouTube whilst we've been on. Michael Huggins asking about Jack Grealish. For some reason, there was a lot of questions about Jack in the preview that Jacob and I did. I've got a lot of my own thoughts about it. I think he'll be available for transfer in the summer. I'm going to do a video on it next week, a podcast on it next week, so I don't want to talk about it too much. I still speak to his dad, but I haven't asked a question, in all honesty, for a while. There was a phase where I was asking him quite a lot, but I haven't asked that question. Last time I asked him, I didn't get the impression that it was something that was particularly on the cards, but I've got to be honest, that was probably 18 months ago when I saw him and I asked him that. Like I said, I'm going to do a podcast on it, so I don't want to say too much. I think this is opinion, not based on any fact whatsoever, just reading between the lines and, speaking to other people as well. I wouldn't say it's a dead cert or anything, but I certainly wouldn't rule it out at all. Jack Grealish coming back to Villa again. Some of the stuff I've said about Asensio and I've said about Rashford previously, I think he's built to come in and re-energise his career. And under Unai Emery, I really think that he's the kind of project player that Unai Emery has kind of revitalised in his time in Spain, time after time. Especially if Villa are in the Champions League, because I know how much Jack likes playing at the top echelons of the game and wants to play at the highest level possible. If he becomes available, I think Villa's a legitimate option, but it would depend on fee. My memory of Man City is, when they let players go, Zinchenko, Jesus, Sterling, people who've won stuff at the club previously, they let them go. They're not unreasonable with their fees. They don't go around asking for 70 million. So that's one to keep an eye on. And I guess maybe a bit depends on Asensio and Ramsey and other players' futures as well. But it's certainly not one I could ever rule out. I think this is going to be a story in the summer. I've just got a feeling. Joe Highland, is Rashford being disrespectful to Villa in the media? I don't think so. It's a funny one to gauge, and it's a funny one to kind of judge with Marcus Rashford. What he's come out and said, for me, the bits I've seen, I don't think it is disrespectful to Villa. I think what he's saying is that, yes, there's something in place for him to potentially go to Villa for £40 million in the summer. It's an option to buy that we know Villa hold. But I think what he's saying is that he believes Manchester United would accept 40 million from anyone. So if another club wanted to come in and offer 40 million, he thinks that would be accepted. And what you've got to remember also is that, you know, Rashford's at a real big point in his career. There's no guarantees that Villa sign him in the summer. There's no guarantees that Villa want him in the summer. Now, I think if we qualify for the Champions League, again, I think it becomes a big conversation and a legitimate thing. Emery's chased him. Emery wants him. Emery likes him. What Emery wants tends to go. And I think if Rashford got the chance to go back to Villa, whatever competition we're in, I think he'd be silly to turn it down, because the improvement in his game already under Emery is there for everyone to see. And with a full pre-season, and Villa may be looking to kind of define a system that meant he could play as the striker or on the left. Rashford's the kind of genuine quality player that Emery loves working with and loves getting his hands on. But there's no guarantee. So he's got to look after himself as a footballer and make sure, you know, people know that he is potentially available and he weighs up his options and maybe there is another move for him. So I've got no problem with the way Rashford's speaking. He's in limbo in his career. He's not going to be going back to Manchester United. He may not come back to Villa if Villa can't make it work on the financials. So yeah, keep an eye on it, obviously, but I think much will depend on what European competition we're in. I think if we're in the Champions League, it becomes a way more legitimate option. Gary Eaton, assuming Marlon will be rotated with Watkins next season and Rashford uncertain, should we / are we looking at another striker? Villa are always looking at every position. That's a fact. There's always players that Villa are looking at. There's always lists. You know, there's contingencies from within as well, as we've seen previously. Rollo and I did a video on Claret and Blue earlier on in the week. You know, contingency at Villa is a thing, something we've seen before. I don't see Marlon as being the number 9. I don't think that's going to be his position for Villa. I think it's the right hand side where Emery sees Marlon. So I would discount him from being a striker option. I think what you've got there is that you're going to have your two main strikers, much like Villa have had Watkins and Rashford, and also Watkins and Duran this season. And then if both of them were to be missing, then yes, Marlon would probably play as the striker. But I think his position is going to be on the right hand side. Again, with strikers, it's going to be an interesting market this summer. There's going to be a lot going on. A lot of big teams are going to be looking for a centre forward. I can think of 3 off the top of my head in the Premier League already that are going to be looking at strikers, and that's going to be Arsenal, that's going to be Manchester United, and it's going to be Chelsea, who, you know, some of them aren't in the best state at the moment, but they're always of interest to big players because they're huge football clubs that play in the Premier League, and unfortunately, some of them, or all of them, could be in the Champions League next season as well, which again is a big draw. Newcastle are going to be in the Champions League, in my opinion, just won a trophy. Yes, they've got Isak, and it's going to be hard for them, much like Villa have found with Watkins and Tottenham found with Kane in the past. But they're probably going to need another striking option as well to boost their ranks. So there's going to be a lot of movement with strikers in the summer. And then lower down the rung, you've probably got West Ham, you've potentially got Brentford if certain players leave as well. So there's going to be a lot of striking transfers in the summer. Interestingly, generally in football, the profile of striker that teams are looking at is changing. Now, I've got a video lined up for the start of next week with a kind of a football analyst writer talking about what clubs are looking at striker-wise now. So I won't go too much into detail about that, but I read something yesterday. It was really, really interesting, really interested me. I spoke to the author of the article and he's agreed to come on the show next week. So we'll talk about that, with Villa potentially looking at a striker in the summer, depending on what happens with Watkins and Rashford. I'd like to get a better handle on what's happening with Watkins, but I saw the interview today on Sky Sports News and just the general noise. He doesn't strike me as someone who's looking to leave himself. But if certain things happen in the transfer market, that can always change. Personally, it would be the last thing I would look to do. I'd be wanting Watkins as my centre forward for Villa next season, and maybe a younger striker to come and compete with him. But Emery might have completely different ideas. Emery might be really set on, I want Marcus Rashford to be Villa's number 9. And look, Rashford's played a lot of games as number 9 for Villa before he broke down with that hamstring injury. So it's going to be really interesting. The striker market's going to definitely be a lot more interesting than it's been in recent windows. That's for sure. You know, there's very good strikers, high-level strikers potentially on the market as well. You know, Jonathan David's on a free. You've got Gyökeres, who potentially will move. His record at Sporting has been absolutely incredible since he moved from Coventry, and they'll be Premier League sides kicking themselves that they didn't go for him when he went for Sporting. And you got Benjamin Sesko at Leipzig as well, who it looks like it could be time for him to move. Liverpool, I didn't even mention in that list of clubs, just won the league. They're going to be looking for a striker as well. So, in conclusion, the striker market is going to be something that's really, really fascinating this summer. Certainly one to keep your eye on. And there's every chance that Villa might form part of that. What else have we got here? They're coming in all the time and I am struggling to keep up with them. So I'll break it up with saying afternoon to AVFC Stato. Hello, AVFC Stato Dale. How are you today? Do let me know in the comments. And Up the Villa has just asked about strikers. I've probably just covered that. Jonathan Ridgway is asking about Kane Hayden. Will he get a chance or be sold to Wrexham? He'll be an EFL transfer in the summer, a homegrown player that goes for pure profit. Could well be Wrexham. I've just actually heard something about Wrexham before I came on, and Tom Kearney and big wages potentially going to Wrexham. So it'll be interesting how they approach the Championship. But Kane Hayden will be joining a top-end Championship side or an ambitious Championship side or a lower-end Premier League side. Villa will sell him in the summer. I'm almost certain of that. He won't be playing for the first team, in my opinion. And from speaking to people and what I've heard, that's going to be I would say a PSR sale, because obviously it's pure profit, but I don't think it is due to PSR. I just think he'll be one that needs a move, needs to play regular, needs to have a home. And there's nothing wrong with that. Doesn't mean he's not a good footballer. I just don't think his career will be for Villa. Gaming and stuff, another Rashford-based one. Surely if Rashford isn't willing to reduce his wages, he's effectively saying no to Villa. In all honesty, I think he's going to have to reduce his wages wherever he goes. I don't think that's a Villa thing. And this is the other thing with the transfer window. I said this the other day on the Saudi show that I did. The longer the window goes on, if he hasn't made his move, Manchester United become more desperate. So do they then supplement wages to get him off the books if they've got a team that wants to buy him? Do they then suddenly say, okay, well, pay him the 300 grand a week or 350 grand a week, we'll knock 10 million off the asking price? I don't think the Rashford one's going to be one that happens straight away. I really don't. Much like he moved in January right at the death, I can see him it being a long saga in the summer. I can really, really see that. What else have we got here? Ronan Ward saying purchases sub goalie. Yep, there'll be a goalkeeper of some description. Right back, I believe we'll sign a right back. Centre back 10 and forward. I think the key thing to say is that's probably a reasonable list. It doesn't necessarily mean big money is spent on all of them. If Villa were to qualify for the Europa League, for example, I see a world where Lamar Bogard is that fourth centre back replacing Dizazi in the squad, a lower cost option. Obviously, Villa have protected themselves with that 5-year contract, and if someone came in with 15 to 20 million for him, Villa would sell him, of course, for PSR purposes again. But I can see a world if we don't make Champions League where he's that fourth centre back as well. So I get there's someone underneath saying we don't have that much money. But if it's a sub goalie, every chance it could be a free transfer. It could be like the right back and the forward are the ones that go for big money, and then the 10 is Nipan, who isn't going to cost an awful lot of money. Asensio is only 13 million. Yep, there's going to be at least 4 or 5 players coming into Villa in the summer. That's a fact. What else have we got here? People watching from far-flung places, as always. Nashville and morning from Nashville. Absolutely, you know what? To break up transfer talk a second while as I scroll down, I would bloody love to go to Nashville. I would. One of the places I would really, really like to go at some point. So, yeah. You can put me up, Nashville and 13. I'd love to come to Nashville. That would be great. What else have we got here? A few people asking questions about the Tottenham game or just talking about the Tottenham game. God, loads of stuff has come in. Roger Barlow, why is Juan Pablo ghosting Jacob? Forgot to ask that question last week. I was so in awe of the man, as I described on the pod earlier on in the week. Forgot to ask him why he was airing Jacob Tanswell. Didn't manage to exchange numbers either, so disappointing. Adam Slack in LA, finally catching a live in LA. Do you think selling Bailey to Saudi and Dendoncker and Buendia will be enough to survive PSR? Potentially it could be, but I said this on the show the other day as well. Bailey might be one that happens relatively quickly, because I know Saudi like to get their ducks in a row pretty fast. And I was speaking to someone who's actually involved in Saudi Arabian football earlier on in the week. They've got mega plans. Funny enough, he got in contact with me after the podcast I did on Saudi Arabia and the Saudi Pro League, and if it's a problem to Villa, and he spoke to me about a few things. There's some really interesting plans going on there, including new clubs entering the fray as well, who are going to be piff backed. So there's going to be a lot of movers and shakers in Saudi. That's for absolute certain. And if a team wants Bailey, I would expect them to move pretty fast. The problem with Buendia wages, Dendoncker wages, we struggled to shift Dendoncker in the last summer window, and he's gone on loan to Anderlecht, and they're paying a portion of his wages, but not a huge amount. But Villa just trying to get him off the books. Those are the kind of signings and transfers that always come down to the end of the window, because teams won't want to pay percentages of the wages that they're asked for. Transfer fees come down. They're not transfers that happen straight away. But do go back and watch the Saudi show, Adam, because I did speak about that on there. What else have we got? Watkins stuff again. Enzo to be assessed in pre-season and potentially another loan from Liam. Could be as well. And I've floated this to Jacob yesterday. Yeah, Villa are in for Mosquera, which would make sense from what Jacob said. And he's been at Valencia and he's had a good time there and he's done well there. Every chance he forms part of that deal. So yeah, keep an eye on that one. Is now the time to move on Ramsey for Barnes or otherwise? Again, spoke about that on the... Did I speak about it? I'm getting confused what I've done because I've done some videos with Rollo and not released them yet. So again, I've got a video coming next week that I pre-recorded with Rollo. I do speak about Ramsey and Barnes on there. Wouldn't rule that out because we saw with Everton, Newcastle, Villa, Forest in the summer window last time around in summer 2024 that a lot of these kind of strange deals and swap deals that aren't swap deals end up happening. There's every chance that clubs work together again. The Premier League hasn't managed to knock that on the head. So there's every chance that happens again before June the 30th. And certainly if Villa and Newcastle could come up with something clever that would alleviate PSR fears, and they got good players in return. I mean, Newcastle got the raw end of the Elliot Anderson deal, that's for sure, bringing in Vlachodimos as fourth choice goalkeeper for 20 million. So if they can do something smarter, there's every chance moves like that transpire. But I don't think Emery would want to lose Ramsey because he rates him, he clearly rates him, he picks him mostly when he's fit. But there's every chance something like that does happen. And Ramsey, of course, as we know, is homegrown, and it's an advantage to sell homegrown players, which is absolutely stupid and against everything I believe in football. What else have we got here? Some stuff that's not transfer based on the Fab board. I've got some very strong opinions on stuff like that. I won't do it now because it's a transfer show, but quite simply a joke. But I'll probably talk about that at a later date. I don't think Aston Villa 1874 might be being sarcastic here. Do I rate Marlon? If you've watched this channel before, then you'll know that I absolutely do rate Marlon. Really, really like him. And think he's going to be a really big player for Villa moving forward. Let me get back to X then and see what else there was on there. Stuff coming in on there all the time. Sorry, I just moved my mouth away from the microphone there. What else have we got? I've covered most of this stuff, I think. Yeah, there's nothing really on X that I haven't covered. There's some great quotes from Luca Digne today, which I'll read here. Villa Report put it up earlier, and I saw it says, when I chose to join Villa, I saw a big project. I came here to help a very big historic club find the top of English football and return to Europe. My dream was to make the fans relive the exceptional European evenings at Villa Park, and we did it. These evenings are magical, and I'm proud that we've succeeded. I feel like I'm playing the best football of my career. I'm constantly progressing. It's a great feeling to constantly improve thanks to experience, optimal physical fitness, and a thirst for success. I love this season, whether with Villa or with France. I think I played 50 games this season in the club and the national team. But even if it's late on in the season, I still have fresh legs. I love playing football, so I don't need summer holidays. He's talking very much like someone that he mentioned his contract in that spiel as well. I think he'll be here for another season. There's no reason to mess with that left-hand side in the summer. Again, obviously, if someone offered to take him away, big wages he's got, I think Villa would look at it. But I think he wants to be at Villa. I think he'll be at Villa for another year, and there'll be a changing of the guard, because I think at the moment Luca Digne's probably the number one left back with Maatsen breathing down his neck. I would think that next season they still share the load, but it becomes Maatsen that becomes that number one, and then Luca Digne is the kind of second. I think he's well worth keeping in the squad. When Gerrard signed him in his first year and a half, I wasn't a massive fan of him, but my God, he's improved defensively, so switched on, always chips in within the system, puts in at least one or two good deliveries a game, dead ball deliveries as well. Luca Digne for me is not a problem, not one we need to be focusing on this summer when there's other areas that we need to be looking at. So I think that probably does me. I wanted to do around half an hour on this transfer show. I'm going to be jumping on and doing much more content as I've said. So do watch out for that. Thank you for those that have joined me live on YouTube, and for everyone that sent questions in on X as well. Apologies if I did miss anything. You'll see I'm in my Hummel shirt with Larson on the back, waiting to go to Villa Park eagerly. So I will see, if you've watched this before Villa Park, I will see you at Villa Park this evening. If you're going back and listening or watching, then on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, a review and 5 stars is really, really important. Please, 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 if you're enjoying the content, could you do that? Also, let me know in the comments on whether it be on audio or on YouTube. Let me know what you'd like to see. Let me know if there's any shows that you want to do. Like I said, I'm aiming to do more now. I want to get more stuff done on this channel, and subscribe with your post notifications on YouTube. That's really important. If you're watching right now and you're not subscribed, please subscribe on YouTube. Just before I do go, Rich1874 says, what's the story with that picture behind you? That for some reason, actually, it's so unique. I don't know where he would have got it from, but one of my best men at my wedding got me a picture of Tibo, my dog, in a 1982 Villa shirt for my wedding, and it's actually really grown on me. I thought it was a little bit weird at first, seeing Tibo being like a human, but now I really, really enjoy it, and I keep it there in the background. So yeah, that's the story. I have no idea where he got it from or whose idea it is to do things like that, but he said to me, I thought I'd get 2 of your loves together on a picture and give it to you. So that's the story, if you're watching via YouTube, of why Tibo is behind me in a 1982 Aston Villa shirt. Right then, take care, everyone. Thank you ever so much. There'll be more content over the weekend, of course, looking back on hopefully 3 points for Villa in their quest for Champions League football against Tottenham Hotspur. Look after yourselves. Safe trip to those going to and from Villa Park tonight. And as always, up the Villa.